What's going on, Chris? Facebook. I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna take a peep at it. I gotta say, I mean, I expected this to happen. That it blew past my target, so I will say that. But I'll get to it in just a moment or so. I mean, that was just what a phenomenal move. I gotta say, I mean, just when you thought that you were pretty much pressing into those lows, that shorts were like, you know what, we're just gonna continue to just get relentless, like they have been with Netflix. As we saw, I mean, they are winning with Netflix though. Netflix already has like about 6 red days right now, so they continue to pretty much basically press into the lows with the market basically favoring it right now. But they got squeezed the hell out on Facebook. That's, I mean, just put it how it is. That's just facts right now. They got squeezed. So, but that's pretty much what this market's done. And in perspective of that is that you have to think, how is this market going to basically take your money, right? What way, what fashion can this market really take your money? And which way can they really squeeze your position, whether you're bull or you're bear right now? And they kind of just set it up perfectly going into the close today. They dumped SPY by 3 points from the high, I think from what, 421 ish down to about 418 that we had into the close. And then guess what? They tried to press into the lows into the close, thinking Bears had the advantage. And guess what they do? They just squeeze it right in after the hours off of the back end of Facebook earnings, which has already been beaten up so much, right? So at some point you expected the dead cat to come off of Facebook, and here is your dead cat that you're getting off of Facebook, right? So I'm gonna look at the levels real quick. But let me get into SPY real quick. So I can basically just tell you pretty much what I'm looking at, what I'm expecting at going tomorrow, and the fact that SPY is up $2 right now is just absurd right now. But if you look at the past, basically the past 4 candles right now that we have on the chart here right now, basically what we've done right now is that we've put in lower highs ever since we basically broke the megaphone here back on the 22nd. We have basically put in those lower highs. As you see, basically the last, I want to say the last 2 candles here. Back from April the 26th, which was yesterday, you saw that we basically retraced 3 quarters of the candle before putting in that new low. Yet again today, we retraced 3 quarters of the candle, and before we put in a new low. So, what actually caught my attention today with the low that we basically put in is because it pretty much signifies basically the same low that we put in back from March 8th. And as you see, we ended up putting in a higher low before we face ripped to make, what I would say is our turning point, our last turning point that we had off of that 460-ish area. So that's why I am expecting at this point in time, granted the fact that we put in such lower highs, lower lows at this point, I'm expecting some kind of reversal going into tomorrow. In terms of the fact that we had Microsoft earnings, we saw what they did, what a face strip they had by morning. They were relatively flat yesterday once they reported, but what a move that was, up what, over 15 points this morning. That was just phenomenal. I expect a little bit more momentum continuing there once we get a reversal on SPY as we see it is after hours. I expect to steamroll with Apple into their earnings. Uh, the only caution I have about Apple is that I expect them to go in just steamrolling with a lot of momentum into the earnings. I don't know how they're going to come out of those earnings. That's what my concern is. So I actually have Apple going up to about 160, 161 into their earnings. My concern is how they end up exiting that earnings, if they're going to be able to hold that level. So that's my concern with Apple. But that pretty much puts us with Apple and Microsoft continuing a little bit of momentum going into tomorrow on the back end of Facebook doing damage already. So that's a solid sign. And then you have to think at this point in time, right? We already had 6 red days on Netflix. You have to be thinking in the back of your mind right now that Netflix is going to snap back and we're going to see some kind of relief. Now, would it be on the 7th day tomorrow? Is very plausible right now, and that's something that's also on my mind. So, granted the fact that we had Microsoft, that's positive with earnings momentum riding. Apple earnings run up is pretty much, off of today's price action, it definitely tells me that we have an earnings run up that's in sight right now. You already have Facebook that's doing a face rip right now. I think the last time I saw the chart, which I am going to review it, 207 was my upside there, so you have a few dollars more to the upside. Likely get a little bit of a dip and rip scenario tomorrow morning. And then it's likely that Netflix is going to give you a nice little break of that 6 day red streak that it's on right now. And then you can already pretty much count in Google giving you a little bit of relief, and Amazon that's likely also going to be another big factor in that, in which we could see about a 80 to 100 point day right into their earnings. So all those pretty much all granted into what I'm expecting going into tomorrow and what we see with SPY after hours. I am leaning bullish right now, and that's just in the sense that once we have Apple report earnings, that might end up being your turning point right back to the downside. So this is pretty much just going into tomorrow. I'm expecting some upside. My upside target is pretty much this green line here. We can go up as high as 427 is what I have on SPY here right now. Otherwise, if we end up taking out the low for whatever reason, we just give up all the gains that we got off of Facebook here, then I'm pretty much looking a downside target here I'm watching is 411. Below that 411 mark, I have us going down towards 405. All right. The other factor that I didn't even put into there as well is also semis. Right now, we actually had Qualcomm that also reported earnings this afternoon as well. So that's another one that was up about $5 to $6 here this afternoon. Right now, it's up $6. On the back end of Qualcomm, I saw AMD and Nvidia also up. So I am holding AMD calls right now. I just put a starter position. If I see a gap up tomorrow, we see the broader market pretty healthy tomorrow morning, then I'll likely add to my position, and I have that one. I'll show you the chart. I think I have it going up to about 91-ish. But I'll drop the chart once I get done here, which is pretty much the overview on the semis and what I'm expecting. So we do have earnings coming up with semis coming next week. So granted the fact that we're pretty much pressing into the lows here off of those daily charts with AMD and Nvidia. I'm expecting those to give you a nice snapback at some point here, and what better day to do that on the back end of all pretty much fang the main names, giving you a nice relief tomorrow. So all that pretty much points to signs that we're going to be bullish tomorrow. Is what is my bigger picture for you. All right. As I pretty much look into Facebook, and I think all eyes were on Facebook here. 201 right now trading. It's up 15%, which is pretty darn large right now. That's pretty crazy to look at. But the upside that I basically had was pretty much looking right around this 207 mark is where I was pretty much watching. And the reason I came up with that 207 mark, which I will tell you in just a quick second. Let me just get my chart lined up. So the 207 mark pretty much lines up. If I go back into history here, you actually see that was pretty much a low that we put in back from June 2020. We snapped back right off of that, which seems like it was likely. Oh no, that was not earnings, but that was a quick snapback. We had a nice little nosedive. We snapped back pretty convincingly. That was also off of the highs that we put in back from July of 2019. So that was another level. And then that also indicates right around that 207 mark was where we pretty much gapped down. We lost uptrend here from February 2020, and we pretty much just nosedive. So 207 is that level that I am watching. That's the level I would expect to get a reversal back to the downside. And this is why I say it's likely that we get a dip and rip scenario come tomorrow morning. Likely we get this pretty much. I want to say hopefully we can get in some kind of position here around the 197-ish mark. Hopefully, I would say. That pretty much coincides with your highs back from April of 2019. That would be the level in which I would watch to see if we get that nice dip. 196 half to 197 is that spot, that little cushion spot. I would look for the dip tomorrow morning, and then hopefully we get that rip from that 196-ish area up to 207, which gives you about a $9 upside here going into tomorrow. So that's potentially what I'm looking at. That's how I see that playing out. But 207 is my high end of this before we get the reversal right back to the downside. All right. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of a game plan, what to watch, what to play tomorrow, and knowing what your upside potential is there. As of right now, if it does hold this 200 level right now, you're looking at about a $7 upside if it actually holds that into tomorrow at that $200 level. All right. So that's one I'm going to keep an eye on. Other than that, AMD, like I mentioned, I was holding on this one. As you see, again, we were pretty much just pressing into the lows. The pattern formation I'm basically watching here is a little bit of a diamond bottom type formation here. As you see, you broke the top, broke the bottom. You have your two little wedges going left, going right. And I'm looking to pretty much break this wedge. As you see, it's up a little bit after hours. So hopefully we get a nice little push out of this little diamond bottom formation. And I have this stretching out towards 91 to 91 half is where I have this moving out towards. All right. So this is going to be one, like I mentioned, on the back end of Qualcomm earnings. This is one that I have potentially going up towards 91 and a half. And this will be a beautiful rip that we should see the semis get some kind of relief as they never endlessly just continue to push low after low, day after day. All right. So 91 would be my upside here on this one. I haven't looked exactly at Nvidia. I know that Nvidia is up about it's up about $3. Nothing crazy. But granted the fact that I do have an anchored VWAP pretty much sitting, if I actually put it from here, let's see where it goes. So that is a little bit of a confluence in which I would say is your upside target here on Nvidia. Let's see if we can get a nice little level here. Where's our resistance that we've had? So basically looking at your resistance level right around here. So you're going to want to take out that anchor VWAP from where you had that little recent high back from April 25th, right? Your recent high that you put in was 199.45. You're going to want to end up breaking that anchor VWAP 188.74. You break that, then you're looking at upside towards 191.50 is where you're potentially looking at. Above the 191.50, then you're looking to pretty much take out that high that you had for this anchored VWAP, in which it also pretty much coincides with where you had a little bit of a distribution as well. If you actually look, you had a little bit of a distribution here back between the range of the end, the third week of April. My mic is a little muffed. Um, Tell me if it's a little better right now. Should be better. All right. But yeah, we'd end up taking out that 191 half. Then I'm potentially looking at this towards that 199 mark, and that'll be beautiful upside in pretty much coinciding with Qualcomm earnings, and then also AMD making that move as well. All right. So that's a beautiful one. I think that's also in the play, with their pretty much their earnings also on the upside. All right. What's the other one that I pretty much wanted to look at? I wanted to look at one other one. I forgot what the name was. Yeah, I did forget off the top of my head. Other than that, let's see what does Microsoft look like actually. Let's take a look. Let's take a peep. App Arc is going to capsize with Tesla and T-Doc lower. Arc is never ending. The fact that we also have Tesla that's expected. I actually have Tesla going down to 700, believe it or not, transitory. So if Tesla's going down to 700, the rest of her portfolio in Arc is just continuing to just nosedive. I would not be surprised that that just continues to just relentlessly press into the lows. So that was not surprising to me. But as I mentioned, pretty much Facebook, Microsoft, giving us nice momentum here tomorrow for the back end of Facebook if it holds those gains. This is one that obviously you saw you had a little bit of a false breakout. Granted, the fact that SPY pretty much gave us a nice reversal. So you're going to want to see this pretty much break over this 287 mark. We get that break back over 207. I actually have this stretching out right up towards that 292 level is where I have my target set for Microsoft. So 287 needs to break over 287. I'm watching 292, in which that was basically your level in which you gap down off of from May 8th. So there is upside potential also on Microsoft. So that coincides with what I'm expecting tomorrow on the back end of Facebook with the semis. So those are all pretty much just beautiful ones that I expect. Looking at Apple also, I haven't looked at Apple actually all day today. I'm being honest, I just know that it was up, and it's actually up after hours too. That's a good sign. I like that. Let's see if we have a level that pretty much coincides what we want to see here. Let me actually get out towards the daily chart. All right, let's take a look at the daily chart here real quick. So I did have the downside. My downside potential was right around 151 up to 152 half. That was my downside potential. And that's likely maybe an outcome on the back end of earnings. But as we pretty much press going into earnings, likely earnings run up potential, what I'm pretty much looking at here is right into what's into this range. This is the range that you basically need to get out of. As you see, you're basically right below it from the earnings from Facebook earnings. That's pretty much propped it up. It's getting into that zone right now. But if we're looking for upside potential here, I'm watching at this 161 was the level that I was watching here for your upside target. That was the level that I was watching here in terms of an earnings run up. I have it stretching up as far as 161 and a quarter is what I have this pretty much pushing up towards. Apple ER equals limit down. I wouldn't. I wouldn't say limit down, but I don't think Apple's gonna come out of their earnings very positive. Just because of the fact that Apple's such a golden child, and that's really gonna be, I think, more so the determining factor with the whole inflation background right now. That's why I expect Apple to really show its weakness in terms of battling this inflation. And that's going to be more so the downside, not just for Apple itself, but for the broader market, in which tomorrow will likely be our relief day. But once they end up reporting earnings, I think that's going to be the reversal right back to the downside. That's going to cause some more selling pressure. All right. But again, 161 and a quarter is basically what I'm looking at in terms of upside here for Apple. So that's where I do have a stretching. And as we see after hours here, it's pushing up almost about $2 here. All right. V, no, I have not looked at Shop. I know that right now we are 6 for 6 on Shop Cloud Alerts, which right now I'm not gonna lie, that is insane right now. Granted, the fact that the Shop Cloud Alert, the win rate on it is 83%. All right, so I do want to pretty much reiterate that, right? The percentage, the win rate is 83%. What I was actually calculating in my mind was that if this one today would have failed, it would have been 5 of 6, in which it would have failed one time. And if you divide 5 by 6, it basically gives you, what is it, roughly 82, 83%. And that would have gave you pretty much what that win rate is. So, but granted the fact that it actually did actually hit today, just be mindful of the next alert that comes out. You want to keep it a small position size, keep a tighter stop loss maybe. That's the only thing that I can pretty much express. Does that mean that the next one coming out is going to fail? No, but the odds are not necessarily against you, is what I would pretty much say. All right. But looking into Shop right now, this is just another one that's just relentlessly just been beaten up right now. Why is that not deleting? All right. This is another one that's pretty much had 6 red days in a row. So pretty much coincides with what the damage that Netflix has done. Just 6 red days in a row is what I mean by that. And the reason why I say that is because in the same breath that I'm pretty much bullish tomorrow, and I expect Netflix to snap its 6 day red streak, I do expect Shop to pretty much break this red streak as well. So be mindful of that. If I pretty much dial in, because I'm gonna have to get into a smaller time frame here with this, I'm pretty much gonna be looking at upside here that I'm looking at potentially is up towards 454. That's basically the level in which you saw, and I'm going to try and expand it as much as I can here. Obviously, you see back from April 22nd up until April 25th, those about 4 days that you had there. You pretty much had what you would say is your distribution, right? And so that's the level that I'm basically looking to retest. That 454, 455 is what I would look to basically retest. And so from current level after hours here, that basically gives you about another $30 move from current level here after hours, and that will basically give you a retest here from where you basically broke down off of that distribution. All right, so 454, 455 will be my upside. That coincides with breaking that 6 day red streak, and is along the same lines of what I expect Netflix breaking that 6 day red streak tomorrow as well. All right, so tomorrow should be a solid day. It's basically pretty much what I hope, what you guys got out of me. I would hope it pretty much follows through as I expect right now. But obviously, I gave you the downside potential with SPY. We'll see if the gains hold with Facebook. I think that's going to be the bigger impact right now, is those gains holding for Facebook. But the fact that it's still pushing right now north of 200, I think what we see after hours is likely going to end up holding. It's not going to necessarily be a flip of the switch what we saw yesterday. Because what we saw yesterday afternoon with us nosediving after hours, obviously that was a 360 from what we saw this morning. All right. I don't necessarily expect that here this evening, because Facebook should end up holding those gains. Qualcomm should likely still be up about $6, as is still up about $6 and change. So solid afternoon, I think, for earnings. Tomorrow we should see a little bit of a run up in terms of Apple. I think that's going to be a nice one backdrop in terms of Facebook holding with momentum, Microsoft holding with momentum. I think those will be beautiful. Nice little backdrop here for continuation on SPY as we try to attempt to get a reversal towards that 427 mark. All right. But other than that, 450 put in the money. I'm glad it's in the money. So that's going to be a positive sign. So on in the morning will likely be your determining factor to likely close that out, V. So just keep that in mind. All right. But I'm glad to see that the cloud alert went off today, that it paid out. We'll see what alerts go off. I think the QQQ alert that we also had earlier on today, that was another cloud alert that Tom created. That was just pretty much another magnificent one that went beautifully, especially off of that $3 drop that we had on SPY. That was just beautiful. So hopefully you guys pretty much took advantage of that. But if I had to give you one message today, is that when you feel uncertain about market direction, wait for something to happen. Don't try to force the situation to happen. I think that's something like when the cloud alert came out with Shop. I think some of us actually forced the situation rather quickly, rather early, and they just pulled the trigger right off the bat. Sometimes you're pretty much pays just to be a little more patient, and so that's something that I would probably express today is just be a little more patient. Wait for the setup to come to you rather than trying to force the situation to happen. All right. But other than that, I'll leave it as it is. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow morning. Appreciate you guys joining in. But let's see some upside in the green market here tomorrow again. All right. But I'm out. Later, guys. Appreciate it.